Assalamu alaikum. So good morning. Mostly welcomed. Okay, still five to go. Meanwhile, any questions, please? And are you able to hear me very well? And any requests? Anything you want me to explain again? I believe that everything here. So you have no questions to ask. We continue and immediately from where we start. Once you start seeing the presentation, please tell. 11 out of 11 out of 18. Is it visible to you, please? Nashwa, are you here? Yes. So is the slides or are the slides visible to you? ظهروا خلاص. We can start. Okay, good, great, great. So we start at the level of of the defining the different types and directives we can refer to last class, and also we presented the extensions that the files in plural files that we can generate whenever we talk about designing a web application using the ASP.NET. ASPX is the main page file, actually, the main extension that we may refer to generate actually the totality of the pages, or the majority, not the totality, the majority of the pages that are to deliver services to end users. They are in ASPX format. Others, they depend on the context, controls, or management, mass if you need applications or something like that. So there are different extensions and different directives we may refer to for different purposes. Whenever we develop a web application and we design a website using the ASP.NET technology, we said earlier in this chapter, let's say on this part, in this context, that the HTML is an stateless and the HTTP is a stateless protocol, in the sense of it does not preserve the requests of a user, and it does not preserve the results of every request that a user does, or that a user sends or submits. Those states, they are not to be preserved, yes, but these deficiency, these let's say a shortness in the work of the protocol, that ASP.NET trespasses in the sense of sets a solution. Amongst the solutions we described was the caching. Now we are seeing something new, which is the view state. The view state is a solution to the fact of being stateless. The web pages, they are stateless. Why? Because the requests have to be submitted again and again and again to the web servers. You may say, actually, whenever I need something, I will click the button, or I will click the link, or I will click the resources to solve the issue, and that's it. I don't care. Yeah, I know, you'll do. I give you the example. Let's take the example of the AD waiver. During the registration period, whenever you are registering a course or submitted, you are dealing with the registration period. 100% all of you noticed that requests, they are too slow. Whenever you try to open the transcript or the study plan or something like that, it takes too much time in loading the pages. It keeps loading, then after it opens. Loading, and then after it opens. It takes time to solve your problem, and sometimes it stuck. It does not respond. It is time consuming. Why? Because requests, they are being submitted to the server, and the server is occupied in doing things, and is not able to respond to you and to solve your issue or request very fast. There are other requests, there are other things he's doing the server, so he's taking time to serve others. Then after, he will respond to your request. This is one of the issues. It's not the issue. It's one of the issues that the fact of being stateless causes. HTTP is stateless, so time latency is one of the issues. Thus, view state is one of the solutions. Not only it's not the unique solution, but one of the solutions that you may refer to solve such a problem. The view state is what? It's a context of saving the state of a control in a web page, in an ASP.NET page, locally in the client's, let's say, environment, in the browser or somewhere in the local machine. Means instead of refilling a control, instead of refilling a control from a server reply, no, it is locally filled and the state is being preserved. So we are going to avoid something called round trip singular, round trip in singular, which is the main cause of time latency. Also, it's not unique, but it's the main cause that causes the time latency, the service to be very delayed and very late in replying and responding to customers' requests. Means the AD-Wave, when it makes us wait a long time for opening the subjects and helping us to finalize the registration of courses, the main cause for this very long time taken by the AD-Wave is the round trips, because every request has to be submitted to the server and come back. Submit to server and come back. Go to server and come back. Round trips or round trip. Every click you do, you as a user, it sends request to the server. Even if you requested the thing earlier, you open the page قبل ب5 دقائق or whatever, the request has to be resubmitted again to the web server. This is said round trip. The view state avoids such a round trip, because the round trip requests two things: a resource in the web server and the time to finalize this round. Resource in the web server, we talk about memory and processing capability. Then the time is the distance in between the user and the server, in addition to the processing time. View state solves that. View state solves that. View state, it saves the state of a control. Remember, we are talking about a control to be saved here. The state of a control to be saved. it's not the full page. It's just a control to be saved. A control means a button, means image holder, it means a data grid, something like that, text box, something like that. Control means the page would hold many controls. One web page may hold many controls, and may hold one control, and may hold no controls. But generally, we will use controls. In general, we'll need buttons, links, hyperlinks. Yes, we can. Labels, even data grids, and so on. All of them, they are controls. Ahmed Al Jabri, how are you? Are you able to hear me, Ahmed Al Jabri? Yes, great, great, good. So, in conclusion to what I was just explaining, here is the context of being stateless, an issue to be solved. Being stateless is an issue. We look to the fact of being stateless as an issue. The stateless is the nature of the HTTP protocol. Web applications based on the HTTP protocol, they are by nature stateless. And since this fact of being stateless it costs us resources and time, mainly time, it is an issue. So we have to make the applications very fast. Yes, it has to respond very fast. So the stateless is an issue. It does not go with the being serving clients very fast. No, stateless will interrupt us, will cause latency, will cause time waste, and so on. Stateless. So from the solutions, we define the view state, which is a property of the ASP.NET control. ASP.NET control. Good. Good, then good, then good. Here in conclusion, the view state, final conclusion, trespasses the fact of that every web page would be lost immediately after a request has been solved. Means a user requests a request from a web server, the web server will reply, and then after closing the page, everything will be lost. The view state will limit that. So the content will not be immediately lost. How? There are scenarios. Mainly, it will preserve the state locally at each control. Good. From the features of this view state, actually, as we was saying, it retains and preserves the state of a control locally at the computer client. Means the web browser. So the state would be preserved locally. Then every request or every re-request, the second or the third or whatever, would be served from the local client. It would not be served from the server side. Yeah, everything would be stored locally, preserved and stored locally. And then after actually those values, which are the state of a control, would be actually given the chance to the developers to control them and save them in some data stores. Mainly we talk about an SQL server since we are dealing with the Microsoft. Yet it's not the unique. The SQL server is not the unique data store. We may refer to other data stores. One of them is one of the very famous and the very popular integrated data store with the ASP.NET is the SQL Server. It's not unique, but it's one of the very famous, let's say, data stores. And thus here, since we are able to store and save the statuses of controls locally, so we are gaining time. We are enhancing the application. From the advantage is that this is an easy way to do. It's not something complicated. Just you have to understand the context, and then after you use whatever is appropriate. The implementation later on is not something difficult because you have to go through a systematic, serialized group of steps. 1, 2, 3, and so on. You'll finalize. It's not something complex. No, it's not at all. and mainly actually this context of the view state, it is to be fired and executed within the page load. The page load, sorry, it's one of the event handlers. We define the event handler last class. It's one of the event handlers, and this is the very famous one to control the view state, because the view state of a control has to be loaded at the early age when the page is being loaded. So it does not need to wait for a time or an order from the user to load. No, the user requests to open the page, the view state has to be let's say fired. So the load event is the one to be considered for firing the state of a control or the group of controls available inside the web page. From the other contexts of the seen as advantage is the context of security. Here, the advantage of the one of the advantages when we talk about security, it is one of the enhancements that the view state also imposes. It is another advantage. Why? Because it supports the context of the encoding. Means if we write in Arabic, it will not say no. Arabic will not preserve. The view state does not go. The view state does not go with the Arabic. No, it will not say like that. It will go. Why? Because the view state still the controls enhance the context of the encoded. Encoded means when you write in Arabic or in English or in Chinese or in Hindi or whatever, the different scripting, let's say, letters, the encoding is supported by the view state. Encoding. One of the very famous encoding is the Unicode. One of the Unicode. That's it. Here it is. UTF-8 or something like that. Whatever. Good. Any questions, please? Continue. Good. The session, the context of the session. One of the other solutions that we utilize to trespass the context of the stateless. HTTP is stateless, so we utilize another solution that can help us as users or as developers both to trespass the limitation of the fact being stateless. Is the session الفترة بالعربية. The session, as per the direct translation of the word, it's a time management, let's say, feature, and it is to enhance supporting the storage of a value related to a variable and being utilized again and again and again and again without losing time or without referring to the round trip context. Means whenever we need a value, and for example, if we need a value to be redisplayed again and again and again, as per an example, the EduWave, we need to preserve the username and password as ID when you log in. When you log in, we do not have to ask you to log in at each page. No, you logged in only at the home page, and then after you can use the system. So how we do that? How to make the system understand that yes, your username is valid and you can use other pages, not only the home page. So we use sessions. We are going to save your value, your username and password, and we will help the system understand that yes, let him use. Fulan, let him use. He is correct. His username is correct, and his password is correct. So let him use the other pages, page 2, 3, 4, so and so on. How to make the system understand and memorize? Using the session. The session is a فترة زمنية to preserve the value of a given variable, or let's say group of variables in general. It's not only one. In this context, actually, we are trespassing one of the very famous limitations of web context, which is the stateless. Absolutely, and the stateless here is seen only through the round trip, no more, no less. Sessions will help us save some values for a given time, 1 second, 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day, eternally, without limit. At the end of the day, it's a period of time to be set by whom? by the developer. Ways how to implement this session. There are so many features that this Microsoft in this context would help us in doing so. The session is not related to the Microsoft, but the session 100% is supported by the ASP.NET environment platform, ASP.NET platform, since it is a Microsoft. But the session is not related to Microsoft. The session is one of the contexts that the web applications refer to. It is enhanced by a variety of web-based programming languages. The session is supported by a variety of web-based programming languages. Yet, since the .NET is supporting that, so it is one of the very powerful tools to refer to avoid round trips. And those values to be preserved, they are either to be a web page based or a web application based. We're going to preserve the thing accordingly to the web page or to a web page, or we're going to preserve that based on the, let's say, web application or referring to the web application itself. Thus, sessions either they are client side or server side. لهذا السبب الفترات الزمنية هذه السيشنز هم إما من الجانب الحريف يتم تنفيذهم وإنشائهم وعملهم من جانب الحريف كلاينت اللي هو البراوزر، وإلا من جانب الخادم اللي هو موفر الخدمة أساسا. Any questions, please? Here I insist. Here I insist. Do you have any questions? No questions. Very good. Very good. From the context of the client side, actually, we may see those four main attributes that help us to generate sessions and to finalize the session. We see the hidden fields. Hidden fields, they are simple HTML context, we may say. They are things to be utilized in background, but not seen by the end user. For example, IDs, ID numbers, or IDs in a grid, or ID in something. They have to identify the user, or they have to identify a process, or they have to identify an application or a request, something like that. So they have to be utilized by the application only, not the user. They would help the user, yes, but it is the application to deploy them and to utilize them. So for this, they are hidden. Text box or button or whatever, they are fields, but they are in a hidden mode. Means the user will not see them. They are having values, but not visible. Not visible to whom? To the client, to the end user. Remember, huh? The view state is one of the contexts that it is a client side. We define that the view state now only, and now earlier, that it is one of the solutions to the round trip context. Is it a website or client side? It is a client side. The view state is one of the client side state management tools. One of the web-based technologies that we refer to track a user, to facilitate the use of applications to the end users, is the cookies. But it also preserves the state, and it can control the state of a control in an ASP.NET based application. The cookies. As per the definition of a cookie, it's a simple text file to hold some client features or properties. Yes, and because if it holds and saves the features or properties of a client, so it is saving the state, and it is a client side only. It is a client side only. Another context of the view state or the client side, let's say, not view state, client side state management tool is the query strings. When you submit actually requests, it's a query to be submitted. The queries they are client side submitted, let's say, components, or let's say objects, and they are client side only. They cannot be submitted from the server side. No, never. Server side, sorry, what the server side, the second part actually, the server side state management options. We see actually the here mainly as we are talking about two, but they are three, regardless of the number. Server side we see two, application state and the session state. Here it is, and we see the profile properties. Mainly also it's a server side. It's a server side other session state management tool. Both of them actually they are to preserve a state, let's say group of values, to avoid round trips, but server side. How it is to preserve round trips, and they are server side because they can preserve, or let's say retain, the time of processing. Yes, whenever a request has been submitted from the client side, has to be received by the server, then processed, then the response will be generated and resubmitted and submitted to the client. The time of processing can be actually rectified. And who is going to do the process? Is the server. So to avoid this time waste during the process, which is not time waste, but to gain time, we may avoid process to be redone again. If it has been done earlier, so khalas, we don't do it again. We utilize the result, and it has to be saved somewhere in the server side. So server side state has to be available there. We talk about either the application related, let's say, information to be retrieved, application related. So it is application state, or user related, or something related to the control, single control, or something like that, a particular value. So we talk about session. From the other components that an ASP.NET actually enhances is the web.config file. Web.config file. This is not actually context we get out from the context of the round trip and the stateless and state management. This is another context. The configuration and the management and how an application, an ASP.NET designed solution would act, how to control, and how to control the users of our application. The web.config file would be seen in action here in this context. What does it mean? It means that developers of a web-based application would refer to utilizing the thing named web.config file to control how a web or their developed or designed web application would act like. How? Who is going to utilize it? When? Where? What are the things to be displayed? What are the things not to be displayed? And so on. Can be controlled using the web.config file. The web.config actually it is one of the components of an ASP.NET solution, ASP.NET. And it has to be one of the internal elements of this ASP.NET. Means whenever we run an ASP.NET application, there have to be one web file, at least one web.config file controlling the application, at least one, because a solution might have more than one file to control different levels of an application. The web config has to control one level. So if we have more than one level, means folder أول subfolder, and so on. So we can have different web.config files for each level. As per the usage of this web.config, it is to control how an application would act like. It is an XML based file, and it has the extension .config. What is an XML now? An XML file is a file, it's a simple text file, but it has to contain XML content. What is XML? XML is like HTML. Yes, it is like HTML. It's a tag-based programming language, extensible markup language, extended or extensible markup language. الاثنين صح. Both of them they are correct. Extensible or extended for the X, M markup, L language, extended or extensible markup language. Means the web.config is simple XML file. XML file. Yes. It holds how the behavior, how the application would behave, and it has to be saved with the .config extension. It has to be saved with this extension. If you change the letter, it won't have its effect. It won't act. Those contexts actually we see other features now. Just let me pass. Yeah, the ASP.NET actually control files, which are the web.config, they have to be seen and set to the control one level, yes, and maybe a full application, yes. And one of the benefits is that they can be utilized and implemented at runtime. Not implemented, but updated, let's say. Update at runtime. Means if web application, an ASP.NET web application has been deployed and end users are using it, can we control the application moreover, and can we update the ASP.NET configuration file? Yes, we can do that at runtime even without interruption, without interrupting the running web-based, actually the ASP.NET web-based solution. So the solution would detect automatically those changes at runtime. At runtime, if you modify the file, the application will detect the modification. It will not say no, you changed, then we stop. No, it will detect the modification and it will act accordingly. The application would act accordingly. To generate an XML file or to generate the web.config, we need just a simple parser. Actually, as a parser, we use the Visual Studio. Simply, we can maybe something like the text editor, the notepad, maybe, yes. But the word parser, it has to give us the chance to visualize the hierarchy of the XML file in order to see the folders levels and the, let's say, commands or queries levels with the sub, let's say, levels. It's just a matter of the design, visualizing the content. Other than that, a simple notepad file, notepad text editor can help us generating the XML file. We do not need a specific parser. We do not need a specific parser, only for the visualization. One of the other contexts that the ASP.NET enhances is the post-back property, which is seen actually whenever a control is being fired. And this control being fired means that there is a function to be called at that firing event, let's say, or that event handler, yes. This function actually, this post-back, is implemented using the JavaScript. And it is to be called whenever an HTML file has been rendered. Remember that the ASP.NET solutions are ASPX, and we do not talk about HTML. And web clients, they do not display ASPX to the client; they display only HTML. So the content is an ASPX, has to be rendered into an HTML, and then after this HTML can be visualized by the client. Thus, the JavaScript can be seen in action and acting with the HTML at the same time. Without the HTML, JavaScript will not act. Without the HTML, JavaScript will not act. Will not deal with the ASP.NET. Remember, thus this postback, since it is implemented using the JavaScript can be actually can have a chance to work without any constraint once it is integrated with the HTML. The respective function, just I wanted you to understand here, the respective function actually that fires this post back function is the do post back. See the syntax, how it is the name. Actually, it is a predefined method, and it is to be generated by the .NET, integrated within the HTML rendered, let's say, page, and the name has to be the same. Any changes, we stop this post back action. The do post back here method, this JavaScript method, it is to be carried on with every control inside the ASPS page, and it is to be actually mainly they have to be actually automatically and autonomous in the sense of that every control has to have their own auto post back. One final point regarding this post back, they are hidden, and they are to be actually carrying some values from the client side to the server side. Two main attributes to be carried on in a hidden way from the client side to the server side is the event target and the event argument. They're holding some values. Whatever the values depends on the application. No. Depends on what is the application, because the web is not like the Facebook, it's not like the University of website, it's not like the Google. They are all of them. They are different web-based applications, and thus the event is not the same from the EduWave when you compare it from the EduWave to the Google. It's not the same, and the same thing. The argument is not the same. It's not the same request to be submitted from the EduWave users whenever we compare it to the Google users. It's not the same. So thus they are two hidden fields, and the two hidden, let's say, fields, yes, input fields, but they are holding different values. From the properties of the ASP.NET, actually, the sequential action, how they are actually being fired, starting from linking the do post back to a control. Then after we invoke that, we create an object from the page. Then after the state has to be actually hidden and submitted, updating the controls accordingly. Then after the load event has to be fired in order to visualize the posted back value to the end user. And so on. It's a context of a sequential order here. Refer to that, please. We come to an end of this chapter. Remember that you have to refer to those to all of the main details of what we saw so far in chapter number 5 and 6. The HTML syntax, it's not new for you. I will give you this file to refer to it for visualizing the HTML also. The basic actually IDE interface. Yes, that's it. The context of defining the IDE elements, the controls, and the toolbox as a placeholder. Then after the link to the background data stores using data grids. Yes, and the visualization of the behind code files. We define that every single ASP.NET, the ASP.NET actually context generates a background file. We define that our book is talking about C# only, but there are other solutions that can be handled also, not only C#. But based on our description and our reference, we are talking about C# only. We're defining the C#. We come to an end presenting this topic. The totality, I said, of the described contents and this topic, they are summarized in 2 chapters, 5 and 6 from the book ASP.NET. It's available to you in the Moodle and in the Google Classroom also. Besides that, I'm going to give you this slide also for you to refer to. Also, this slide, I'm going to give it to you. I'll submit it to you just right after this class. If you hear your name, please type yes. If you hear your name, please type yes. I will go fast. and I will mark absent whomever does not reply from the first shot. عالية، أحمد، عائشة، غدير، نشوى. ما ذكرت اسمك نشوى. عالية وينك؟ أين أنت؟ إيمان، جهينة، جهينة، إيمان ورارية، مزون، نشوى، نصر، راقية، روان، ريان، رزان، ردينة. بس رسلت لك إيميل، عندي مشكلة في دخول فيديو الاستوديو. I'll check it. I'll check it أحمد. don't worry. ردينة. ردينة يس. لحظة. ردينة يس. شذاء وين؟ إيمان وعالية ورارية. إيمان and عالية. Okay, thank you very much. See you inshallah next class.